My father's ultimatum demanded I celebrate the brother who'd stolen my future, my own dreams held hostage. But a chilling, anonymous text message revealed his stolen victory wasn't as secure as he thought. The phone felt like a block of ice pressed against my ear, each word from my father chilling me to the bone. "Chloe, it's not a request. It's a condition." His voice was calm, measured, the same tone he used when closing a business deal, which, I suppose, is exactly what this was. "You will be at your brother's celebration on Saturday. You will be pleasant, you will smile for the pictures, and you will congratulate him. If you do that, your final year's tuition is paid, as we agreed. If you don't show up, or if you cause any kind of scene, you can consider our arrangement terminated. You'll be on your own." I squeezed my eyes shut, my knuckles white as I gripped my phone. On my laptop screen, the university's student portal was open, displaying the terrifyingly large number that was my senior year tuition, a number I had absolutely no way of paying without him. I was 3 years into a grueling pre-med program, running on caffeine, student loans for living expenses, and the singular promise from my dad that he would cover the tuition itself. It was the only financial support I'd ever really gotten from him. It always felt less like a gift and more like an investment he expected a return on. "Dad, you can't be serious," I whispered, my voice trembling with a fury I was trying desperately to contain. "You know what he did. You know why I can't celebrate him." "What Liam did," he said, his voice hardening, "was win the prestigious Harrington National Scholarship. He has a full ride to any Ivy League school of his choice. He's 18 years old and he's already set for life. What he did was make this family proud, Chloe. Something you might want to try sometime." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. I sank into my desk chair, the springs groaning in protest. Of course that's all he saw. He saw Liam, the golden child, my younger brother, shining brilliantly as always. He didn't see the shadow Liam's light cast over everyone else, especially me. This party wasn't just a party. It was a victory lap on a track he'd built over the wreckage of my own dreams. 2 years ago, I was in his position. Not for a scholarship, but for something that felt just as big. I was a finalist for a competitive summer research program at Johns Hopkins. It was the key to everything I wanted. A leg up for med school applications, a chance to work with leading researchers, a sign that all my sleepless nights and sacrificed social events were worth it. The final stage was a presentation and an interview over Zoom. I had spent weeks perfecting my research, my slides, my talking points. I saved everything on the family desktop, the one with the best processing power for my complex data models. The night before my interview, the file was gone, not just moved, deleted, wiped clean. I searched every folder, every recovery drive, my heart pounding in my throat. When I confronted Liam, who had been using the computer all evening to play a game, he just shrugged, a picture of teenage innocence. "I don't know," he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. "Maybe you deleted it by accident. You've been pretty stressed." My parents took his side instantly. My dad told me I was being irresponsible for not having a dozen backups. My mom said I was being dramatic and trying to blame my sweet, innocent brother for my own mistake. I had to do the interview from memory, stumbling through my data points, unable to show the charts and graphs that were the entire foundation of my project. I didn't get the position. The feedback was brutal, promising but unprepared. It broke something in me. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my gut, that Liam had deleted it. There was a flicker of triumph in his eyes that only I seemed to see. He'd never liked me getting the academic attention. And now, here he was, having won a scholarship for a science project that looked suspiciously similar in its methodology to the one I'd lost. And I was being commanded, under financial threat, to show up and applaud him, to smile while he celebrated the victory he only won because he'd kneecapped me in my own race. "Dad, he sabotaged me," I said, the words tasting like ash. "This is all built on a lie." "Enough, Chloe," he snapped, his patience gone. "I will not have you poisoning this happy occasion with your jealousy and your 2-year-old conspiracy theories. You've always been this way, unable to just be happy for your brother. This is your one and only chance to fix that. Be there, or be cut off. The choice is yours." He didn't wait for a reply. The line went dead, leaving me in a silence that was louder than his shouting. For an hour, I just sat there, staring at the tuition bill. My dream of becoming a doctor, the only thing I'd ever wanted, was hanging by a thread. And the thread was held by my father, who was using it to pull me into a celebration that felt more like a funeral for my own ambitions. I couldn't drop out. Not now. Not when I was so close. I had to go. I had to swallow the acid in my throat, paint a smile on my face, and pretend to be the proudest big sister in the world. I would do it, I decided. I would go, play my part, secure my funding, and then I would work on cutting them all out of my life for good. Taking a deep breath, I closed the tuition page and tried to practice a smile in the blank screen of my monitor. It looked more like a grimace. Just then, my phone buzzed, a text message from a number I didn't recognize. My stomach twisted, thinking it was my dad with another demand. But it wasn't. It was a picture. My breath hitched in my throat. The picture was of me, taken 2 years ago. I was sitting at that same family desktop, my head in my hands, tears streaming down my face. It was the moment I realized my presentation was gone forever. It was a photo I never knew existed. Below the image, a single line of text appeared. "Don't forget how this feels. Just keep it in mind when you're smiling on Saturday." My blood ran cold. I dropped the phone on my desk as if it had burned me, a picture of me at my absolute lowest, sent by a ghost. My hands shook as I picked the phone back up, my thumb hovering over the number. Who? Who was there? Who had a camera out while I was having the worst moment of my life? I tried to remember that night. My parents were in the living room watching TV, completely deaf to my frantic sobs. Liam was in his room, probably basking in the glow of his victory. There was no one else there. Was there? I typed a furious, trembling reply. "Who is this?" Sent. Delivered. No reply. I tried calling the number. It rang once and then went straight to a generic voicemail service. The number unidentifiable. A burner phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a random wrong number. This was targeted. Someone knew the whole story. Someone had documented my breakdown, and now they were using it. But for what? To warn me? To mock me? Don't forget how this feels. Was that a reminder to stay strong, or a threat of what would happen if I stepped out of line? The next 2 days were a blur of anxiety. Every buzz of my phone sent a jolt of panic through me. I couldn't focus on my studies. My dad's ultimatum and the phantom texter had formed an unholy alliance in my head, a two-front war against my sanity. I needed to talk to someone. I couldn't tell my friends. They wouldn't understand the toxic, knotted-up dynamics of my family. There was only one person, my cousin, Sarah. Sarah was my mom's sister's daughter, and she was the only one in the family who saw things clearly. She'd always treated me like a person, not a failed version of Liam. I called her, my voice low and shaky, and laid it all out. The tuition, the ultimatum, Liam's party, and finally the anonymous text and the picture. She was quiet for a long moment after I finished. "Oh, Chloe," she finally breathed. That's next level evil. Both your dad and whoever sent that." "I know, right? But the photo, Sarah, who could have taken it? You know what my parents' house is like. No one was there." "Are you sure?" she asked, a thoughtful pause in her voice. "That was the day of your big interview, right? The spring of your sophomore year? I remember my mom mentioning she'd stopped by your house that evening to drop something off for your mom. She said you were holed up in the office looking stressed. Maybe she was still there when it all went down." Aunt Carol, my mom's sister. She was nosy, a gossip, but malicious? It didn't seem like her style. Still, she was a possibility, a new thread in an increasingly tangled web. "I don't know," I said, my head spinning. "What do I do, Sarah? I have to go to this party. I have no choice." "I know. she said softly. So you go. You put on your armor, you walk in there, and you give the performance of a lifetime. Be so sweet, so proud, it makes their teeth hurt. Don't give your dad or Liam or this mystery texter the satisfaction of seeing you crack. Secure your bag, get that tuition, and then you can figure out the rest. Her words were a life raft. She was right. That was the plan. Performance of a lifetime. I would be Meryl Streep winning an Oscar for Proud Sister. Saturday arrived like a death sentence. I spent an hour on my makeup, covering the dark circles under my eyes. I chose a dress that was professional and elegant, a deep blue sheath that screamed unbothered. Every step of my preparation felt like I was dressing a stranger for battle. The drive to my parents' house was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Their street was already lined with cars, the house blazing with light, spilling laughter onto the perfectly manicured lawn. The pit in my stomach churned. I was about to walk into the lion's den and toast the lion for eating my future. I parked the car down the block, needing a final moment to compose myself. I took a deep breath, checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror, and repeated Sarah's words like a mantra. Performance of a lifetime. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, the screen lighting up the dark car. My heart leaped into my throat. It was the unknown number again. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely pick it up. It wasn't a picture this time. It was another short, cryptic line of text. He didn't just delete it. He saved a copy first. I stared at the words, my brain struggling to process them. A copy? Liam kept a copy of my stolen work? Why? As a trophy? For blackmail? A wave of nausea washed over me. Before I could even begin to formulate a response or a question, a second message buzzed through, right below the first. Guest office computer. Password, EV-bound. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. The air in my car suddenly felt thick, unbreathable. He saved a copy. The words echoed in my mind, a gong sounding in the hollow space where my composure used to be. For 2 years I had mourned the loss of that project, the weeks of my life that had vanished into the digital ether. But it wasn't gone. It was sitting on a hard drive somewhere in that house, a piece of my soul held captive by my own brother. And this anonymous messenger, my strange, shadowy ally, had just given me the key to the prison. Ivy-bound. The sheer arrogance of it made me want to scream. It was a taunt, a victory flag planted on the thing he'd stolen. My carefully constructed Meryl Streep persona shattered. This wasn't about performance anymore. This was about reclamation. My plan twisted, morphed into something sharper, more dangerous. I wasn't just here to survive the party. I was here to get my work back. I shoved my phone into my clutch, my hand steady now, fueled by a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I could do this. I had to. I walked up the stone pathway, the cheerful chatter from the backyard a jarring contrast to the war drums pounding in my chest. My mom spotted me as soon as I entered. Her face, pinched with anxiety just a moment before, smoothed into a mask of relieved hospitality. "Chloe, darling, you made it!" she exclaimed, loud enough for my dad standing by the bar to hear. She wrapped me in a stiff, perfume-scented hug. "Of course, Mom. I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, my voice dripping with a sweetness that felt foreign on my tongue. My dad gave me a curt, approving nod from across the lawn, raising his glass of scotch in a silent, "deal upheld." I smiled back, a cold, sharp smile that didn't reach my eyes. The performance was back on, but now it had a purpose beyond just securing my tuition. It was a cover. I navigated the crowd of my parents' friends and colleagues, enduring condescending pats on the shoulder and questions about when I was going to catch up to my brilliant brother. Each comment was a fresh log on the fire of my rage. I finally found Liam holding court near the sprawling food table, surrounded by his friends. He was glowing, soaking in the praise. He looked every bit the golden child, his smile wide and easy, without a hint of the cunning that lay beneath. "Liam, congratulations," I said, stepping into his circle. He looked momentarily surprised to see me, then his expression shifted to one of smug satisfaction. He'd won. I'd shown up just as Daddy demanded. "Thanks, Chloe. Glad you could make it," he said, his tone just a little too casual. "I'm so incredibly proud of you," I continued, forcing my voice to sound warm. I gave him a quick one-armed hug, my skin crawling at the contact. "What you've accomplished is just amazing." It was my masterpiece of insincerity. He bought it completely, his chest puffing out just a little further. With the necessary greetings out of the way, my mission began. I needed to get to the guest office. It was on the second floor, at the far end of the hall, a room that was mostly used for storage and my dad's occasional overflow paperwork. Under the guise of needing the restroom, I slipped away from the party. The music and laughter faded behind me as I entered the cool, quiet house. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. I crept up the stairs, every creak of the floorboard sounding like a gunshot. The hallway was empty. The door to the guest office was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and slipped inside, closing it gently behind me. The room smelled of dust and old paper. The old desktop computer sat on a small desk in the corner, its monitor dark. It was the same model as the one downstairs, the one where my work had been lost. My fingers trembled as I touched the mouse. The screen flickered to life, showing a generic login screen. I typed in the password, Ivy Bound. It worked. My breath caught in my throat. I was in. I frantically clicked through the files, my eyes scanning for anything familiar. Documents, games, school folders. Then I saw it. A folder deep in the C drive, labeled simply Archive. My pulse roared in my ears. I clicked it open. Inside was a single file, my file. Siege, Hopkins Presentation, Final Draft. My full name, my project title. He hadn't even bothered to change the name. It was all there. My research, my data, my charts, my notes. 2 years old, but perfectly preserved. A wave of vindication washed over me, so potent it almost brought me to my knees. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined it. Here was the proof. I pulled a flash drive from a hidden pocket in my clutch, a paranoid just in case I hadn't really expected to use. I plugged it into the tower, the quiet whir of the machine filling the silence. The progress bar for the file transfer seemed to move in slow motion. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. It felt like an eternity. With a final, satisfying chime, the transfer was complete. I pulled the drive out, clutching it in my fist like a precious gem. I did a quick, frantic search for the recycle bin, intending to delete the original file from this computer forever. But as I scanned the desktop, my eyes landed on something else. A folder labeled HS Apps. Curiosity, sharp and irresistible, took over. I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of files, drafts of essays, application forms, and one file that stood out, Harrington Scholarship, Essay Final Docs. My finger hovered over the mouse. I knew I should just get out of there, but I couldn't stop myself. This was the essay that had won him everything, the one my dad called a work of genius. I had to see it. I double-clicked the file. The document opened. I read the first paragraph, a beautifully written, evocative piece about the power of scientific inquiry and overcoming adversity. It was good. Very good. Then I got to the second paragraph, and the blood drained from my face. I wasn't reading Liam's words. I was reading my words. It was an excerpt from my own personal journal, an entry I had written after a particularly inspiring day in my university genetics lab, a private, password-protected online journal that no one should have ever been able to access. He hadn't just stolen my research project. He had stolen my voice. He had stolen my life. The world tilted on its axis. My breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. It wasn't just a single paragraph. The entire essay, the work of genius that had secured his golden ticket, was a mosaic of my life. He'd lifted passages from my journal, paraphrased my class notes, and twisted my personal anecdotes about my passion for medicine into his own narrative. He had presented my soul as his, and won. The theft of my research project was a calculated act of sabotage. This was an invasion, a complete and utter violation. The flash drive in my hand no longer felt like a victory, but like a single piece of evidence in a much larger crime scene. My rage became something cold and clear. The time for quiet suffering and strategic retreat was over. My father's ultimatum, my tuition, the need to play nice, it all evaporated in the heat of this betrayal. They weren't just celebrating his success, they were celebrating my erasure. Armed with the flash drive, I didn't just have proof of one misdeed. I had the key to unraveling his entire fraudulent triumph. I didn't bother deleting his files. Let him wonder. I walked out of the office, down the stairs, and back into the party. My posture transformed. The frightened mouse was gone, replaced by a predator. The music seemed to stop as I walked onto the patio. I made a beeline for my father, who was mid-laugh with a business associate. "Dad," I said, my voice low but carrying an undeniable weight. "I need to talk to you, Mom, and Liam, in your office, now." My father's smile faltered. He saw the look in my eye and knew this wasn't the compliant daughter who had arrived an hour ago. "Chloe, we have guests. Whatever this is, it can wait." "No," I said, my voice ringing with a finality that made his associate take an awkward step back. "It can't." He stared at me for a long second, his jaw tight before giving a curt nod. He excused himself, found my mother and then Liam, pulling him away from his adoring fans. The four of us convened in the sterile silence of my father's home office, the same room where he had delivered his ultimatum over the phone. The air was thick with tension. "What is the meaning of this?" My father began, his voice a low growl. "You're making a scene." "A scene?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, we're well past scenes." I walked over to his large mahogany desk, plugged the flash drive into his laptop, and pulled up two files side by side on the large monitor for them all to see. On the left was my original Hopkins presentation. On the right was Liam's scholarship-winning project. The methodologies, the data interpretation, even some of the phrasing, they were virtually identical. My mother gasped. Liam went pale, his cocky smirk vanishing completely. My father stared, his face a thundercloud of disbelief and dawning horror. "This," I said, pointing to my file, "is the research project you told me I irresponsibly lost 2 years ago. And this," my finger moved to Liam's file, "is the plagiarism that won him a full ride. He didn't just delete my work, Dad. He stole it. He waited 2 years and passed it off as his own." That's not true," Liam stammered, his eyes wide with panic. "Our work was just similar." "Oh, it gets better," I said, my voice dripping ice. I closed the project files and opened a new document, his prize-winning essay. Then I logged into my personal online journal on the laptop's web browser. I placed them side by side. "Tell me, Liam, how did you get access to my private journal, the one that's password protected? How did you manage to write an essay about your passion for science, using my exact words about my experiences in my genetics lab?" Silence. The blinking cursor on the screen was the only sound. My mother looked like she was going to be sick. Liam was cornered, his lies collapsing around him. My father sank into his leather chair, his face ashen. He looked from the screen to his son and then to me. For the first time, he wasn't looking at his disappointing daughter. He was looking at a stranger who was holding a bomb. "Liam," my father said, his voice a strained whisper, "is this true?" Liam just stared at the floor, the golden sheen completely stripped away, revealing the petty, jealous boy underneath. His silence was a confession. I finally looked my father in the eye. "You gave me an ultimatum. You told me to come here and celebrate a lie, or lose my future. You told me I was jealous. You called my pain a conspiracy theory. You have never once believed me, never once supported me, never once stood up for me against him." I took a deep, shuddering breath. So here's my ultimatum for you. You will call the Harrington Scholarship Foundation tomorrow morning. You will inform them that your son's application was based on academic fraud and plagiarism, and he will be withdrawing. He will face the consequences of his actions, and you will transfer the full amount for my final year's tuition into my bank account by the end of the day, not as part of a deal, as an apology, as the bare minimum of what you owe me. Chloe, you'll ruin him, my mother sobbed. He did this to himself, I shot back, my heart a cold, hard stone, and you all let him. I looked back at my father. He looked old, defeated. The power he held over me was gone, and we both knew it. He had built his family's reputation on the pristine image of his son, and I had just handed him the proof that it was all a lie. He could try to cover it up, but I had my copies. I would go to the foundation myself. I would go to the universities. I would burn it all to the ground. He had left me no other choice. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the phone. He didn't look at Liam. He didn't look at my mother. He looked only at me, his expression a complex mix of fury, shame, and a sliver of something that might have been respect. "Get me your account details," he said, his voice raspy. "I'll make the transfer tonight." I didn't stick around for the fallout. I pulled the flash drive from the laptop, turned my back on the wreckage of my family, and walked out of that house without a single goodbye. The party was still going, the oblivious guests still laughing. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "How's the performance going?" I smiled, a real smile this time. "The show's over," I typed back, "and I got my happy ending." I started the car, and for the first time in 2 years, I drove away from them feeling not broken, but free.